An IQ below 20 represents the most severe end of the intellectual disability spectrum, affecting roughly 0.05% of the population. Individuals in this range cannot independently perform basic physical tasks like feeding themselves, sitting upright without support, or communicating through conventional language. Full-time care is not optional. It is a permanent requirement for survival. What is possible and what gets overlooked in clinical descriptions is connection. A child in this range may not be able to speak a single word, but will turn toward a familiar voice, calm down when held by a parent, or light up at a favorite song. The severity of cognitive limitation does not determine the depth of a human life. Low IQ scores between 20 and 55 cover two clinically distinct bands: severe and moderate intellectual disability, affecting roughly 0.5% of the population combined. A person in this range may be able to say a few dozen words, recognize family members by face, and follow a simple one-step instruction like "sit down" or "give me that." But multi-step directions, reading, and abstract reasoning are largely out of reach. With appropriate support, many individuals in this range can learn to dress themselves, help with basic household tasks like setting a table or folding laundry, and hold supported employment in structured environments. The ceiling is not fixed. It is heavily shaped by the quality of the environment and the consistency of the support around them. Below average IQ scores between 50 and 70 define mild intellectual disability, the most common form, accounting for roughly 85% of all intellectual disability diagnoses. A person in this range can typically read at a late elementary school level, handle basic money transactions, and follow a bus route they've practiced, but will struggle to fill out a job application independently, interpret a lease agreement, or navigate an unexpected change in routine without support. They hold jobs, live semi-independently, maintain relationships, and in many cases, move through the world without a formal diagnosis at all. What determines their outcomes more than anything else is not their IQ. It is whether the people and systems around them understood what they actually needed. Borderline. Scores between 70 and 85 fall into borderline intellectual functioning, a band that affects roughly 12 to 14% of the population and is almost entirely absent from public conversation about intelligence. A person in this range can hold a conversation, keep a job, and manage a household, but will find tasks like reading a complex contract, managing a budget across multiple accounts, or keeping up in a fast-paced classroom significantly more draining than their peers find them. The cultural tendency to treat this band as invisible does significant damage. It produces educational systems that fail to support the students who need the most support, workplaces that mistake processing speed for competence, and a social narrative that leaves a substantial portion of the human population feeling like they don't belong in it. Average intelligence. The average IQ range, roughly 85 to 115, contains approximately 68% of the entire human population. This is not a consolation category. It is where most of human civilization has been built. People of average intelligence are capable of genuine complexity, learning new skills, solving novel problems, and building deep expertise through sustained effort and experience. A person in this range becomes a nurse, an engineer, a lawyer, a teacher, a business owner, and does the work well. Abraham Lincoln, one of history's most consequential leaders, is estimated to have had an IQ in this range and reshaped an entire nation through judgment, empathy, and relentless self-education. The difference isn't how deeply average intelligence can think, it's how quickly it processes large amounts of abstract information at once. Given time, good instruction, and the right environment, average intelligence produces extraordinary outcomes. It is not the ceiling of human potential, it is the foundation everything else is built on, above average and bright. IQ scores between 115 and 130 place a person in the top 15% of the population. And the difference from average is felt most clearly in speed and range. These are the people who finish the exam early and still score the highest, who walk into a new field and are contributing meaningfully within months, and who tend to find that most environments, academic, professional, social, move at a pace that feels comfortable rather than challenging. This is the band that produces a disproportionate share of doctors, attorneys, executives, and specialists. Not because other bands can't reach those roles, but because above-average processing speed and capacity make the long training pipelines of those careers significantly more manageable. Warren Buffett and John F. Kennedy are both estimated to fall in this range, two people who reach the absolute peak of their respective fields through intelligence paired with extraordinary discipline and judgment. The limitation of this band is subtle, but real. Above-average intelligence is high enough to succeed comfortably within existing systems, which means there is less pressure to question those systems, less discomfort that drives original thinking, and less hunger for the kind of deep, unconventional exploration that produces genuine innovation. Comfort is a ceiling as often as it is a reward. Gifted. IQ scores above 130 place a person in the top 2% of the population. This is where the qualitative experience of intelligence begins to shift, not just in degree, but in kind. A gifted child may teach themselves to read before kindergarten, breeze through math 2 grade levels ahead, and then spend the rest of class staring out the window. Not because they're disengaged, but because their brain finished the problem before most students read it. This gift carries a cost that is rarely discussed openly. The boredom that results from chronic understimulation is often misread as behavioral problems, disengagement, or lack of effort. The most common outcome for an unidentified gifted child is not exceptional achievement. It is chronic underperformance in a system that was never designed for them. Highly gifted. Above an IQ of approximately 145, a threshold reached by roughly 1 in 1,000 people, something changes that goes beyond academic performance or professional success. This is the person who, in the middle of a conversation about one topic, has already mapped out 3 downstream implications nobody else in the room has considered, and has to decide whether to say so or let it go to avoid derailing everything. The loneliness that frequently accompanies high giftedness is not a personality flaw. Think of figures like Nikola Tesla, a man whose ideas about alternating current and wireless energy were so far ahead of his time that even his most educated peers couldn't follow them. The intelligence that makes highly gifted individuals exceptional in intellectual domains makes ordinary human connection significantly harder to sustain. Profoundly gifted. IQ scores above 175 represent roughly 1 in 10,000 people. A level of cognitive rarity so extreme that most standard IQ tests cannot accurately measure it. The tests run out of ceiling before the ability runs out of range. William James Sidis could read the New York Times at 18 months, taught himself Latin and Greek by age 6, and enrolled at Harvard at 11. Terence Tao, widely considered the greatest living mathematician, was solving calculus problems at 8 and earned his PhD from Princeton at 21. The tragedy of profound giftedness is that it is frequently indistinguishable from dysfunction in conventional environments. A mind that has outgrown every available intellectual container doesn't look exceptional from the outside. It looks restless, difficult, and impossible to satisfy. Because it is. The environment failed the mind, not the other way around. The ceiling problem. The hardest intelligence to measure is the kind that doesn't fit the test. In 1983, psychologist Howard Gardner proposed that human cognitive ability is not one thing, but many, and identified 8 distinct intelligences that standard IQ testing was never designed to capture. Those 8 are linguistic, logical mathematical, spatial, musical, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalistic. Standard IQ testing measures 2 of these 8 with precision, logical mathematical and linguistic, and largely ignores the rest. A person who struggles on a standardized test may possess extraordinary interpersonal intelligence that no algorithm can replicate, or spatial intelligence that makes them a gifted surgeon, architect, or athlete. That is not a flaw in the data. It is a limit on what the data can see. And even beyond Gardner's framework, history's most consequential minds were frequently not its highest scorers. Darwin was considered unremarkable by his teachers. Einstein failed his university entrance exam. Steve Jobs looked at existing technology and reimagined it as something the world didn't know it needed. Nelson Mandela walked out of 27 years in prison and chose reconciliation over revenge, a form of wisdom no IQ test will ever measure. The intelligence that changes the world often looks, from the outside, like something that doesn't belong on a scale at all. Not because the scale is wrong, but because the most important things it measures are not the only things that matter.